Here is the recent Tonga eruption as seen from satellite data. You could see this thing all the way from space, that's how massive it was. You can see how this wave that goes through impacts New Zealand right down there, as well as some of the other Pacific islands really nearby. I remember reading about this eruption on Friday night, and by Saturday morning I was woken by tsunami warning signals. I live really close to the beach, and we have this like tsunami alarm system that goes off if there ever is a situation. I even heard stories that some people were evacuating, even though luckily it wasn't that bad. Some of the beaches were actually briefly closed. It was really more this part of the California coastline they were worried about. Here's actually a chart of our tsunami alert system. We were just in advisory, so stay out of the water and away from the shore. Strong currents, dangerous waves. That red is pretty scary. Get to high ground or inland immediately. Follow evacuation signage. This is when at least a meter or 3 feet of water is coming in. There is even actually a short-term atmospheric response to the blast, and you can see it ripple throughout the entire globe. That doesn't seem good. If you were to compare it to the country of France, this is how big the explosion looked like. So it almost like completely engulfs the country itself. NASA scientists estimating Tonga's blast was 10 megatons. And if you're still not convinced how massive this thing is, here's a breakdown of just how big some mushroom clouds get. It's very easy to look at this image and think, oh, that doesn't seem too large. But in the green, that is the height of the Empire State Building. In the blue, that is Mount Fuji. And in the red outline, that is Mount Everest. So it is even bigger than Mount Everest. It looks like it's almost 2 Mount Everests stacked on top of each other. That is a mushroom cloud though, which, you know, is different. This is actually a website showing us a nuke map where we can input different presets of historical bombs that have gone off and overlay how much of the map it would destroy. So if we want to drop one of these things right on top of New York City, let's see how much damage it would cause. So first we're going to use the Davy Crockett, or the smallest US bomb ever produced. Oh wow, okay, that doesn't seem terrible. I mean, it's all, you know, relative. Obviously it would still be pretty bad. Now, how about a North Korean weapon tested in 2006? Okay, so this is what they had in 2006. And how about 2009? Okay, that's worse. 2013, even bigger. Now, this yellow is the fireball radius. You definitely ain't gonna make it through that. The green is the ionizing radiation dose, likely fatal. There's also a moderate blast damage radius and then a light blast damage radius. How about what North Korea tried in 2017? Okay, this is really scary. But if you really want to be terrified, you gotta try the Tsar Bomba. This is the biggest ever. This is the worst it could possibly get. Okay, yeah, that would be bad. You could literally still very clearly see it when you zoom out and look at all of the US. It's literally almost impacting Pennsylvania. Seems like it's kind of a waste to use it on a coastal city though. And if you didn't think there was already a massive amount of people living in Manhattan, New York, there's actually an idea for a new Manhattan. Whatever. This would be an additional 250,000 New Yorkers. This is the most Dutch thing I think the Americans have ever thought of. Basically, we're just gonna get rid of the water and build more land. Sometimes I forget we can just do that now. The green outline represents the wetlands. Then we're gonna have a bike and pedestrian path on the inside. Then a South Ferry station that moves through the center. A subway extension, Governor's Island. And then, yeah, you're probably gonna need to build some new lines, some new stations, that's for sure. I guess it would also protect against storm surges while also housing a bunch of people. This is an extension of 1,700 acres. Maybe they're also trying to lessen the population density too. But man, isn't this gonna mess up their whole like grid systems and how they number all the streets? I guess they could always use negatives. Maybe extending Manhattan would help us avoid any sort of situation like this. A Chinese cannibalism map. These are all instances of cannibalism in China since the Qin dynasty, which is like 200 BC. Now, most of China's population lives along the coastline. You'd think there'd be a lot more instances of cannibalism there just because there's more people. But maybe it's actually the opposite. Maybe in order to resort to cannibalism, you have to be in a very rural area. You probably don't have access to many resources. Then again, right now, pretty much everyone lives east of this line cutting through the country. But that's like right now. I don't know what it looked like thousands of years ago. Now I just really want to see a US version of this map. There are a couple of events I can think of. Speaking of China, here's their world map in 1799. This is what the Earth looked like according to the Chinese. And you can see China very clearly outlined right there. Now remember, at this point, the world actually looked something like this. So it appears they didn't know or just didn't care what was going on in America at all, which is funny because like Western Europe, that's all they were really focusing on. A few decades later, they would turn their attention to Africa though. Looks like Australia was only kind of half colonized by Great Britain, and China knew it was there, and they knew the half that no one was owning at that point. They could have definitely gone there and grabbed up a little bit if they wanted. I'm sure they were dealing with a lot of other things though. Where is Japan? It's crazy how they kind of nailed the outline of the continent of Africa Africa, and Europe doesn't look bad either. But they didn't know exactly what Japan looked like? There's also clearly a Caspian Sea and a Black Sea. They got Russia down. Or was this just like some sort of rivalry that took place? They didn't even want to put them on the map. For reference, here's what a British map maker had for 1794. Oh, that's right, it was briefly New Holland there for a second, so they might have made the Dutch mad if China came down here. Weird to see India portrayed so small in both of these. I mean, can you really blame them for not having like a perfect map though? They was dealing with so much at this same time. A map showing where school uniforms are prevalent. In the yellow, we have school uniforms prevalent in most of the schools, and in blue, not so much. It's really just the US and Canada and North America, and then like all of Europe, except for the outliers Romania, Great Britain, and Ireland. Literally almost everywhere else is very much a uniform type place. In middle school, I had to wear uniforms, and then in high school, I didn't, so it was like a weird experience with both of them. Weirdly, New Caledonia doesn't require it, and neither does this island by Madagascar. I'm assuming in some of these countries, there's a little bit of both, but maybe one is just more popular than the other. So in these gray countries, do those places just not wear anything? Most popular sports by country, I can already tell you that red's gonna be a whole lot of soccer or football. Clearly this map was not made by an American. It is labeled football. In the blue, it's also football, but yeah, you already know where I'm going with this. Now, of course, Canada enjoys hockey the most, but I'm surprised some of these other places aren't big fans of hockey. Specifically in the north, like the Nordic countries, it looks like just Finland and Latvia. I know Russia likes their hockey, but the fact that they like soccer more is really surprising. Isn't soccer in Siberia basically hockey? You're like slipping around the icy tundra. In Cuba, Venezuela, Panama, and Japan, it's actually baseball. Love how that's America's pastime and everything too. And this is why a lot of people predict basketball to be the #1 sport. China loves basketball, so do the Philippines. Surprised North Korea isn't on this list. They have their own league and everything. Another somewhat win for football. Australia likes Australian football. New Zealand likes rugby. And unsurprisingly, South China likes cricket. Crazy to see Lithuania's favorite sport is basketball after everything that happened in 1992 when the Grateful Dead music band helped sponsor Lithuania's national basketball team. That band cemented their love for this sport forever. The US-China trade war from 1980 to now. So in the red, we have countries whose biggest trading partner is China, and in the blue, it's with the US. So things are going to really start to change now. It's 2003. A lot of Africa begins to switch over. Whoa. A lot of Europe begins to switch over. Australia and New Zealand has been permanently on Chinese trading lines. When did that happen? Somewhere like 2005. And they become like a very deep red. This is what it more than likely looks like now. What a crazy switch in just 40 years. I'm sure there are several factors behind this though, and you probably need to take this with a grain of salt. Also keep in mind, not every single one of these countries have US or China as their #1 trading partner. Horse arrival in America circa 1493, 1 year after Columbus set sail. So obviously it starts from Spain in 1493. They start to bring in some horses to the Caribbean, then to Cuba. At some point in 1509, they made it to South America, and then Central America. I can't tell if in 1565 they were already in Florida, and then they began to move, or if they just landed in this state. And then once they got up through Mexico, it was just, it was a frenzy. Interesting because like a lot of the movement in the 16th century was probably done by humans, like we were physically moving them around. So it seems like they might have gotten around pretty fast. But then from northern Mexico to Canada, that took them over 100 years. At this point, there was just so much land to explore. Oh, but they were also being taken in by France, Flanders, England, and Sweden. All around kind of the same time too. Without them, could we really still be cowboys? I love this stuff. We all know Australia is not very populated. They have about the same amount of people living in it as North Korea, I believe. Yeah, they're both at 25 million. Yet half of those people only live in the red areas. So about 12.5 million live in these small little slivers. But yeah, humans live in cities if you didn't really know. Again, this continent is huge, but it's also a lot of desert. Still, this is a crazy way to present this information. I haven't seen it like this before. The Earth's oldest trees and where on the world map they are at. So at the bottom here, we have Azerbaijan and Greece with trees about 2,000 years old. Also in Scotland and Japan, Sri Lanka as well. This is a really confusing way to present all this information with all these arrows. Look how many old trees the US have. But I guess that's because we haven't had centuries of humans potentially trying to cut that stuff down. That's probably the case with a lot of the old world. We did have a tree in Florida that was 3,500 years old, but it was destroyed in 2012. That hurts. There's a tree in Nevada. That's what I'm more shocked about. Prometheus, 5,000 years old. Australia potentially has a 10,000-year-old tree, but who knows? Sweden's getting close. And then the top 3 are in the US, 2 from California, and 1 from Utah, the Pando. They estimate 80,000 to them. How is there that big of a jump? I don't understand that. Okay, wait. You have no idea how confusing this image is. The world's largest tree, and you're showing me a satellite map with an outline outlier. How big is this million-year-old tree? Is it underground? Made up of estimated 47,000 branches that appear to us as individual trees. Yeah, there's like a huge root system all under the earth. Okay, yeah, it's kind of unfair. This guy, of course, is huge. You can think you cut one down, but in reality, like, there's plenty of others. How did we even discover this thing? Who says, hey, I think all these trees in this little area right here are all one giant tree? How high was this guy? I guess you can kind of see it. They do look all kind of similar, and it has over 40,000 stems or trunks. How dirty was French and German electricity production in 2021? This is an hourly comparison each month of this year. In the red, we have Germany, and in the green, we have France. So I'm assuming these constant dips is like the day and night cycle. You can also see more electricity being used in like the September-October region. Not so much during this summertime though. Yeah, this is probably because France uses a lot of nuclear energy. Gets really crazy when you look at the world map. Australia is really struggling out here. Not as bad as South Africa, who looks like they top the list, at least as of 2017. Poland, India, Indonesia, Australia, and China really filling it out at the top. USA is up there, but not at the top. Norway, Sweden, and France are actually some of the lowest. 8 ways to divide the Netherlands. Cities versus farms. Wet feet versus dry feet. I mean, I could have told you that. Beer, Coke, XTC. What do I want to know what that is? Inbreeding versus perfectly fine people. Didn't know that happened in the Netherlands. Here's the political map of this country. This actually looks really complicated. Gas fields, gas profits, and then flat versus like one hill. Well, they don't call this the lowlands for nothing. And big thanks to I Stole Drew's Pet Dog, I Love Marks, Drew's Arab Sugar Daddy, LuxembourgLover, King Corey, Drew's Argentinian Grandpa, Canadian Union, Dalton D, BringBackPolandball, Barnsky W, AryanAfterHours, a Fat Norwal, Alfonso M6, Ivan Lima, Majestic Populous Michael, Max Cooper, McBlorf, Mimo Shiki, Mind Brothers 999, Robert Philip, and Ride the Pie.